to Silke's HeARTy tips with me, with Silke. I am trying a new streaming platform today. I've had some issues with Facebook, so hopefully this will all go well. Please do let me know if this is working, if you can see me, if you can hear me, if it's all hunky-dory. Please give me a thumbs up and just let me know that it is working, because this is a brand new streaming platform for me today, so hopefully it's all going well. So hello, I'm Silke, Heart for Art. I teach people step-by-step how to paint. I do that online and in my studio. Welcome to this week's episode of HeARTy Tips with Silke. Today, I am going to teach you all about paint transparency and show you a couple of super easy tricks to combat any issues you may have from paint transparency. Now, if you've ever been painting and you're trying to paint over something and you can still see what's underneath, like your pencil lines or whatever, because the paint's just totally transparent, like this, for example. So you can see the black underneath that. Then I am going to show you today how to deal with that. Or if you're just wondering why one color of paint barely hides what's underneath and another color completely masks it. Like, for example, these colors completely mask it, but these ones don't. So I'm going to show you that. I'm going to just teach you all about that today. But please do, if you've come on, say hi. Like I said, I'm trying a new streaming platform today. So please, if you're here, say hi. Let me know that this is working and that you can hear me okay. And let me know if you've ever had any issues with paint transparency, if you've been painting and you've been struggling with it. Because I'm going to save you a ton of frustration and hassle today. Now, I've been painting for years and years and years, like for as long as I could hold a paintbrush, basically. And a lot of what I do is just on instinct. I forgot that once I learned it. I just kind of know it now. And I forget that once I didn't know it. So I forget that other people find the stuff I know in my head quite handy. Like if you've painted with me on a virtual paint party before, I share loads of tips and tricks and techniques as we paint. So you get it. It's a really great way to learn as you're painting. And almost every single virtual paint party and studio paint party, I share how to fix the paint transparency issue. It is that common. You pretty much come across it every time you paint. And I've had loads of feedback from people recently telling me that that was one of the best tips that I've shared with them, one of the best things they've learned from me. So I want to, and it's saved them lots of frustration. Oh, hello, Andrea. Yay. I see your comment. Oh, I'm so pleased with that. I've had some issues recently with Facebook and doing all of their rollers, including that I lost all of my content on Heart for Art page today. Just disappeared, just poof, everything was gone, and it said no posts. But thankfully it's all back now. So yes, Facebook's having some issues. So thank you, Andrea, for commenting. I'm so pleased that this is working. But yes, I've had lots of feedback about people telling me that this tip is like one of the best things I've shared with them, and it saved them a ton of frustration. So I thought I would share this with everybody today. And nice thumbs up. Thank you, Andrea. And help you, just let you know how to solve this issue. And it's just a super, super handy one. Now, you can get some stunning effects using transparency. Like on my Wellington by Night, for example, we put some nice highlights and sunset reflections in the sea. But generally, it can cause a bit of headaches as well. If you don't know how to deal with it. So I'm going to show you right now how to deal with it. And I'm going to tell you the reason. The reason basically that there are some paints that are transparent and some that are not is basically because all paints are not created equal. Some pigments are just naturally more transparent than others because of the particles that they're made from. So let me show you, like, here's a little thing I painted earlier today. So you can see that some of the colors are really quite transparent. like the yellows and the oranges and the reds, even the light greens are quite transparent. And even the blue, you can barely even see any blue on that one. So that is the, which one is that? That is the cool blue. But then you've got this blue here. So we've got two blues. One is totally transparent and one is not transparent at all. All right. So that is basically because all paints are made from different pigments, different pigment particles rather, and they're held together essentially by a binder like oil or something. And some of the pigments are transparent, so really see-through, and some of them are opaque, like this one. All right. And white obviously is the most opaque color. All right. And that's basically because they all absorb light differently. They each kind of refract or reflect light in different amounts, and some let more light in and some reflect less, and vice versa, which basically causes the different levels of transparency and opacity, because it's all down to the pigments and the particles that they're made of, as to whether they're transparent or opaque. So the more light a color lets in, the more transparent it will be. So obviously yellow is letting loads and loads of light in and it's completely transparent, but this one here is not. Oh, that's still wet. Whoops. I just finished painting it before. I don't know when I was still wet. So this one is not letting any light in, and therefore is bouncing all the light back, and it's very opaque. So the levels of transparency, as you can see, vary between the colors. So we're just looking at this top line here. They really vary between the colors, and they also vary between mediums. So whether you're painting with oils or watercolors, pencils, whatever, the transparency will vary depending on what you're using as well, and also across different brands. You know, different brands of paint use different amounts of particles, pigments in their paints. So some will be better, some will be worse, depending on what brand you get. Some paints actually have transparency indicators on the tube. I don't have any. I ran out of time to go dig some paints out, but some of them will have like a little circle, and it'll have like some of this circle shaded in, and that'll give you an indication of how transparent that paint is. But, you know, I'm going to teach you today how to overcome it, so it's not going to be an issue. And some paints, some brands of paints even have like a version of each color in a transparent version and an opaque version. So you can buy a transparent yellow or you can buy an opaque yellow, depending on what you want to do with it. It's entirely up to you. That's a case of just shopping around and finding what you're looking for. So how to fix the transparency issue. Now, it's only, like I said, you can get some nice effects using the transparency by layering your colors. But if it's a problem and you don't want to, you know, you don't want that and you want your colors to cover completely, one way to fix it is that you could buy more expensive paint, because they put more pigment into their paints, and so it's less opaque. Essentially, less light is getting in. But that gets expensive, you know. So I'm going to show you a much, much easier way to do that today. Now, I should preface this with the fact that you can actually do more coats, which will also fix the transparency, like yellow, for example. If you do another coat, it will be slightly less transparent. If you do another coat again, it will be slightly less transparent. But some of these colors, it takes a lot of coats, like a lot of coats, and the color is still really, really transparent. All right. So those are the tricky ways to fix it, is to buy more expensive paint or do loads and loads of coats of color, and that will fix your transparency issues, like up here. All right. But I'm going to show you the easy way. Now, the easiest way, essentially, is to mix a little bit of white in it. So this second line, excuse me, the second line of colors here. Oh, the blue's still wet as well. Whoops. I literally just finished this not so long ago. So this second line, hey, Karen. Hi, nice to see you here, Karen. How are you? So the second line here, this is basically the color I've painted with just the straight color, straight out of the bottle. I'm using student grade acrylic paints. I've painted straight out of the bottle. In this first row here, this second row here, I've added a little bit of white. All right, white is the most opaque color. So if you add a little bit of white to your colors, it helps with the transparency. It basically, they join together and party up, and the white, the transparency, and the opaqueness go, oh, this is nice. Will be less opaque, less transparent. So all these colors are the same as up there, just with a little bit of white added. So you can see it's already made it a whole lot better. You probably only need, there's still a little bit of transparency happening here, but if you did a second coat, you probably would only need a second coat, as opposed to here, you probably need 3, 4, 5 coats. And here, these ones are all fine. There's no, even the blue, look at that. Even the blue is not very transparent anymore. So that's just adding white. All right. So I'm going to show you that now, how that works, like in a painting field. And here's one I prepared earlier. I've just created a nice grassy green base. And what I want to do is basically just show you how it happens while you're painting. So, for example, you've got your base colors, you've got your background all set, and you want to put some yellow flowers in. So I'm just going to get some yellow here now. Let me turn you around a bit so you can see what I'm doing. There we go, rather than looking at me all the time. There we go. So I'm going to put some yellow in now, and I just want to paint some yellow flowers. All right, so I'm going to put a yellow flower here, and you can see already that as you can barely see the yellow flower, I'm just going to do a really basic standard flower, and you can see already that, well, you can't really see the flower because all the background colors are straight over the top. See how all that green is showing through because the yellow is so darn transparent. So that's just straight yellow with nothing in it, and you can see straight through it basically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of white. Have we got some white? Yep, here we go. I'm going to add a little bit of white. Now you don't want to put too, oh, that's got blue as well. Let me start that again. I picked up some blue somewhere along the way. So I'm going to get some yellow. My canvas, my palette is very messy, as you can see. I've been painting this afternoon. I didn't want to start a new palette. So I'm just going to add a little bit of white, and it will make the color a bit lighter. But you can see now when I paint, I'm covering the green now. So I don't have that same issue. If I wanted a bit lighter, a bit more yellow rather, I can add a bit more yellow in. I've gone quite extreme there. But now you can see that as I'm putting the paint on, I'm actually covering the green. So all I've done is just add a little bit of white. And when you hold your brush on a more, rather than holding your brush on a perpendicular angle, because all the paint sits in the belly of the brush on the sides. So if you're painting like this, the paint's just still going to be sitting there going, la la la, I'm not doing anything. When you're going to use me? So if you hold your brush more parallel to the canvas, then the belly of the brush will be on the canvas. That's the belly of the brush. I always say to my people painting with me, get your belly to the canvas. And a nice light touch, and that will put more paint on. So there you go. I'm just gonna put a purple center in that just to make it interesting. There we go. So now you can see just with a little bit of white, I've covered that background, and that transparency issue is pretty much gone burgers. Yay! That's a saying in New Zealand. If you're from overseas, that might sound weird. It's gone burgers. It's gone. So that's the simple way to do it, is to just put a bit of white. White is the most opaque color, so you just have to put a little bit of white in your color, and that will overcome the transparency of that color. And that works for all of them. So as you can see, this is the second row I did with white. So that's all the straight colors as they are. I mean, that one's just ridiculously transparent. And then adding white, just a little bit of white, I've done this whole second row, and that is how that works beautifully. The second way so that's the first way. The second way to overcome the transparency is by mixing your colors using an opaque color. So you can see these colors here are a lot more opaque than the transparent colors. So if you don't want to lose, your white, you don't want that sort of the whiteness in your color, it does soften it a little bit. You can use some of the opaque colors to mix your color. So for example, if I wanted a purple flower, red is very transparent, but you can see that the blue here, this cobalt blue, is not very transparent at all. So I can mix myself a nice purple. Let me just clean my brush. I can mix myself a nice purple using a bit of red. Have I still got some space left on my palette? I'm sure I have. Using a bit of red. Now that red is really transparent, and a bit of cobalt blue. And I'm just going to mix myself a purple. It's more of a blue purple. I might want it a bit more reddy purple. More reddy purple. Okay, and then this is just an example, right? So I've added, instead of adding white, I've added another opaque color. All right. So it has the exact same effect. As long as you're combining an opaque color with a transparent color, it's going to have the exact same effect. All right. So now I can paint my next flower. I'm just doing seriously basic flowers here, just purely for demonstration purposes of transparency. So you can see that that's now going on, where red was previously ridiculously see-through and transparent, like to the point where you can barely even see any effect at all. All I've done now is add a bit of that opaque blue to it. And then, of course, if I want to add a bit of detail, just getting into the whole painting of flowers thing, just because we want it to be a little prettier, we can add a dip of white and just put a bit of shading on, and then give it a, we're going to go black center on this one. Oh, missed the black. So that's how you see. Now you can't even see the background through that. It's working perfectly. So that's the second way. So the first way was to add a bit of white. The second way to add another opaque color. And the third way, sometimes when you want to paint your background, it's easier to paint the whole background first, rather than, like, if you wanted to put your flowers in, it's really tricky to paint around your background, around where your flowers are going to go. Same as with my sunset, for example. Sometimes it's just a bit tricky to paint all of your background around the shape of your flower. So what I did with this one is I painted the whole background first, and then I used white to create the sunflower shape. I'm struggling to get some clean white. My white's a bit dirty. So you can create the flower shape using white. So you're basically covering your whole background with white. And this is really good effect if you want to, really retain the vibrancy of your colors. If you don't want to lose that really nice bright yellowness, for example, of your sunflowers, and you want to just retain the brightness of your colors, you basically just go in and put your background, you put where you want your flower to be in white, and then you can paint over that. So I've just put my flower in. This is where my flower is going to be. So I've completely, because the white is totally opaque, it's completely covered the background. And like I said, this is really good for if you're doing lots of stuff on top, but you don't want to paint your background around all these shapes. You do your background and you just paint the white back in where you want it. Now the key though is drying in between coats. So get your trusty hair dryer, give it a blast. Okay, that should be dry. And then you can paint right back over the top of it. So I'm just going to clean my brush, get my white off. Let me just check that that is in fact dry. Yep, cool. And now you can paint right back over the top of it, and you're going to get this third line here. This is the third line. I'm going to put this on my blog probably next week. But this third line here is essentially where I've started with a black background, and then I've painted white over the top, and then I've put all the colors back on top. So you can see that none of them lose their vibrancies. There's no transparency issues, and that yellow is nice and bright again. So I'm going to get my yellow, and I can just go straight over the top, and look how beautiful and bright that is. Straight over the top, and then it doesn't really matter if you go over the edges, because that yellow is so transparent, it doesn't matter. And the added bonus is that you actually get a little bit of extra texture, because you've got 2 layers of brush strokes that are adding texture. All right, so now you can see as compared. Let me just do another flower with no white background, just to show you the difference. I'm just doing some really quick basic flowers here. I mean, you can barely see that one. Look at the difference between these flowers. Okay, so that is with the white background painted in now, and then with no white background painted in, and that is with a little bit of white added. So that's your 3 different ways that you can overcome the transparency issue, and it's all down to the pigments. The pigments in the paint, so there's nothing we can really do about it. I'm just going to add a little dip of orange to these, just because I quite like to just make them a little prettier. No real reason other than I like to paint. And then I'm going to give this one a red center. There we go. Look at that. So real quick flowers, nice and easy. And you can see that that one is also a lot more vibrant yellow-wise than the one that I added a little bit of white to. So depending on what you're trying to achieve, those are the 3 different ways that you can, overcome your transparency issues when you're painting. Now, just because it feels a little weird, I just want to give these some stems, because they're just floating flowers now. So I'm just going to give them some stems, just so they don't float completely weirdly on their own. There you go. That's just me being pedantic. Cool. Cool. Glad I'm glad you're watching too, Karen. I'm just reading your comments now. I'm so glad this streaming platform is working too. It seems to be working better than straight through Facebook. So that's the 3rd way to paint your color, but do make sure to dry between your coats. If you're painting onto a background, make sure your background is dry, then put your white on, make sure that is dry before you put your color on top. If you don't, it'll just be like mixing the 2 colors as per before. So yeah. And now if you try these tips and you find that you're still having some issues, it could well be that your paint is too cheap. All right. Let me turn you around again. Hello. Here I am again. Yes, it could well be that your paint is too cheap. Because the cheaper paints like kids paints and stuff, it could just be bad quality or cheap paint. Kids paints and school quality paints, for example, they're cheaper because they use less pigments. The less pigments there are, the more light gets through, the more see-through the paint becomes. All right. So just switch up a level if you're using the really cheap stuff, or even change brands. Some of the brands just don't have good quality, but just try it out. The more professional paints, they do have a way higher pigment count, so they're more intense and way less transparent. But don't rush out and buy expensive paint, though. You know, your student grade paints are totally sufficient. All right. Especially if you're just painting for the first time or just starting to learn to paint, or if you're just painting for your own enjoyment. If you're not going to sell your paintings or hang them in a gallery, you don't need the professional stuff to have fun and learn to paint and still get good quality results. All right. You can usually overcome the transparency issue with the tips that I just shared. All right. Now, if you want a little bit more advice about what to buy, if you have got, you know, cheap or not really good quality paints, I've got another blog on my my website, heartforart.co.nz there, called Art Supplies You Need to Get Started and Where to Shop to Get Cheaper Prices or something like that. But look for Art Supplies You Need to Get Started, and I've done another blog, another HeARTy tip like this, just giving you some advice on what paints and all the different grades the student paints and where to shop and what to look for. So go and have a look for that. Could I use gesso for the white base? Karen says, yes, you can. You absolutely can. The only reason I use white for the base is because it's a lot cheaper than gesso. Gesso can be quite expensive. Now, if you're wondering what gesso is, do I have any handy? I do. Gesso is basically a white base. Good question, Karen. Thanks for bringing that up. Gesso is basically a white primer. Essentially, it's used for priming canvases. Actually, I've got lots of good tips in another blog I did about repurposing and recycling canvases and all the different gessos you can get. It can be quite expensive, but you can get cheaper ones as well. But this you can use that in the same principle as I did as well. This one actually has a little bit more pigment added to it, like a chalky sort of pigment, which makes it even more opaque than white paint. But white paint kind of is pretty sufficient, and it's a lot cheaper than gesso as well. But you can use either. You can use either. I mean, if I'm recycling my canvases, I just paint right over them with gesso. Yeah, so that works. So yes, go and have a look. You know, if you've been painting and struggling with transparency and paint colors, I'll sum up in a second. But in the meantime, go and have a look at my blog. There's loads of other stuff there as well. But yes, if you've been struggling with the transparency issues, like I showed you, all the paints have different transparencies because of the pigments that they're made up of. All right. You can see the lighter colors. You just can barely see them over the black, and then some of them are a bit different. All right. Yes, Karen, if you've got canvases to repurpose, if you've got paintings that you're like, oh, I'm not so happy with that, or whatever, totally repurpose them. Go and recycle them. Go and have a look for that blog. I think it's called Repurposing Canvases or Recycling Canvases and Where to Get Them. So that's on my blog as well. Very handy on that. But yes, if you're not sure how to fix your transparency, like I said, the first way, and it's because there's different pigments, different amounts of pigments and different types of pigments and different colors that make them all have different levels of transparency, as you can see in that first line there. The first way to fix it is to add a little bit of white paint. All right, so in that second line there, you can see I've added white paint to all of these colors, and it already works a whole lot better. So those ones are really, really transparent at the top here. A little bit of white paint, make them a lot less transparent. So that is the easiest, quickest way to fix that issue. And the third way is basically to paint white underneath first. All right, so like I did with this flower here. So paint white underneath first. So that's this bottom row here. If you've got a dark background and you want to put a transparent color on top, paint white, whatever shape you want or need, paint white on top first, and then you'll get all these beautiful bright colors again, and you won't get, it does mute your colors a little bit when you add white to it. So if you want to keep that vibrancy, then put white underneath. So I'm going to put that up here. I will load this on my blog at some point next week. So I hope that's helped. But do like I said, go and have a look at my blog. There's loads of other tips. If you're just learning to paint and you're coming across some issues or frustrations, do go and have a look. There's a ton of helpful stuff there that I've added, and I'm loading new stuff all the time. Coming up soon, I'm going to do brush care, how to make your brushes last longer. But there's loads of stuff there, lots of free little painting tutorials to have a practice on. And do follow me on Facebook. Facebook is merging the likes and the follows. So if you only like my Facebook page, Heart for Art, they're merging them together soon. So you won't see my page anymore. So do make sure you're following rather than just liking. And go and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Heart for Art NZ. I load everything there as well. So And if you're on my mailing list, you'll be the first to know when there's new stuff as well. So head on over to my website, sign up to the mailing list as well, and you get in the draw for monthly prizes. Awesome. Oh, good. Great, Andrea. Lovely. So thanks for watching, and I hope that has helped. I'd love you to let me know how you get on, if this has helped you. So do let me know if you've had a go, if you've watched this tutorial or any tutorial. I love to hear back how it's helped people, or anything else you're struggling with. Send me a DM or an email or anything. And do go and check out my blog for other helpful stuff. And if you'd like a painting to practice on, like a proper painting like this one, for example, go check out my upcoming events. This one's going to be fun. And we use that white painting technique on this as well. So we paint the whole background, then we paint white. Basically, we paint white sunflowers in, and then paint the sunflowers over the top, so we get to keep that nice vibrant color. So go check out my upcoming virtual events and studio events on my website. It's all in the menu, and there's on-demand painting tutorials on the website as well. They're all in the menu, or on the homepage is the latest events. Loads of fun, easy ones, and you will not only have fun learning to paint a new painting, you will also pick up loads more tips, because as I teach, I share how I've done stuff and teach you lots of tips, and you learn stuff as well. So yeah, come join me online for a virtual paint party, or go and grab an on-demand tutorial, or come join me in the studio and I'll provide all your stuff for you as well, and afternoon tea. Awesome. So pop on over to my website. Where is it? There. Oh, it's usually there. It's this new thing. Oh, it's in a different place. So like I said, hope that's helped, and you have less frustrations painting and have more fun painting. Till next time, happy painting to all of you. Where is the end button? There it is. Happy painting to all of you, and enjoy the rest of your weeks. Thank you for watching.